I open the council meeting and policy committee meetings for the 2nd of June 2020. And first of all, I'll call for any apologies.
Mr Mayor, we have no apologies this evening.
We have no apologies. Look, 1.2 is live stream and recording. This council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to be live streamed and recorded. Please ensure that if and when you speak at this council meeting, that you ensure that you're respectful to others and use appropriate language at all times. Orange City Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting, and a recording will be made for administrative purposes. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. I'd also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, of the Wiradjuri Nation, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who are present. Declarations of interest. Does any councillor wish to declare any conflicts of interest in any matter for consideration at the council meeting? I have one. Well, I don't know the exact number. You'll find it. It's an application in there for Untitled League. It's a non-pecuniary and non-significant. Both my wife and I are members. She's a very good golfer and I'm hopeless.
I heard that.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'd probably be the same. I'm a member, so same for me as well.
So that'd be a non-pecuniary, non-significant too. Thanks, Councillor Hammond. Any others?
No, Mr Mayor. That item is item 2.2 in the Finance Policy Committee meeting.
Yeah, 2.2, thank you. There are no Merrill minutes. Now, the council meeting adjourns for the conduct of the open forum. And first of all, we have Holly Manning, representing the Orange Farmers Markets. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you very much. Just checking that you can hear me okay.
Fine, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Kidd, councillors and management team of Orange City Council. Thank you for your time. I'm approaching you as the manager of the Orange Farmers Market on behalf of the committee, which is made up of Orange Farmers Market members, local producers and stallholders. As you know, our last two markets have been held in alternate venues after the decision was made by councillors to not allow the farmers market to take place on council land. When this decision was made 4 days before the March market, the councillors were understandably anxious with the very real fact that COVID had reached Orange. We weren't given the opportunity to address the concerns the councillors had during that meeting, but we believe our March and April shop and go markets spoke for themselves, demonstrating the precautions taken to make the market safe and also showing that our local shoppers are happy to comply with the restrictions in place. We're grateful to the Agrestic Grocer for allowing us to provide a produce pickup in March and the Mad Hatter for offering us a space to hold the market in April. The Mad Hatter venue off Peasley Street was only large enough to fit a quarter of our usual stallholders with COVID distancing measures in place, and only 50 shoppers were allowed in at a time. But the market was a success in terms of its ability to comply to our measurements and to connect local producers with Orange residents keen to access fresh local produce for their families. We now ask that councillors consider reinstating our monthly access to use council land for the wellbeing of local community who need to access fresh produce, to support local producers and to provide a large space to keep everyone safe in the coming months. Our previous letters to council have already explained that the New South Wales government has approved food markets to stay open, that all our stallholders are from a 100-mile radius attending the market and returning to their farms, that all of our stallholders hold a council food safety certificate, and almost always the only people who have handled the produce are the producers or stallholders themselves, and produce is often picked that morning for ultimate freshness. This isn't a social event, it's an opportunity to pick up pre-ordered produce and purchase essential local fresh produce. Other markets run by agencies continue to operate with measurements in place, and in some cases have increased the number of markets per month to ensure their communities are accessing fresh local produce, reducing the numbers of people in supermarkets. Now, with restrictions loosening and tourists about to enter our city, We need to provide activities that are well controlled with measurements in place that will also boost economic growth. We have demonstrated with our previous markets the level of measurement stallholders and shoppers are willing to adhere to for the market to be as safe as possible. You can get a full list of the measurements on our website. Even though the state restrictions have relaxed with food courts open and gyms and community centres opening from Saturday the 13th of June, which is the same day as our market, our processes and safety requirements will remain in place. We're taking it very seriously. The Naylor Pavilion is a clean, expansive and relatively new council structure perfectly designed to give us the space we need to safely distance the stallholders and shoppers and to limit the number of shoppers in the venue at one time. While we're fortunate to have access to Mad Hatter, this is not a space that is easy to manage with the expected number of tourists about to venture out to Orange. We request that the councillors take all of this into consideration and return to providing their community with a venue that is perfect for the safe purchase of food and groceries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Manning. Thank you very much. Our second speaker is Neil Jones, and that's on Notice of Motion 4.1. Thank you, Mr Jones. Yep.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and good evening, councillors, and nice to see you all again. Look, I'd like to make it very clear that I am a member of the Ploughman's Wetlands Care Group, and this submission is on behalf of that group. And I hope that to encourage you tonight to oppose the motion from Councillor Prevotera that Council remove the recently installed no fishing sign at the Ploughman's Creek wetlands and once again allow fishing at the wetland, or any other amendments that might occur during tonight's meeting that might lead to fishing being allowed in the future. Just a bit of background information. Of course, the Ploughman's wetlands are part of the 4 constructed wetlands that were constructed a number of years ago to provide the stormwater harvesting to the city. And right from the very beginning, and included in the environmental assessment for these wetlands, it was deemed that fishing would be a prohibited activity. And signage has always been in place right from the beginning. Now, none of the dams associated with each of these wetlands is particularly large when compared to Gosling Creek, Spring Creek and Lake Canobolas, where fishing is allowed. However, the environmental value of the Ploughman's wetlands and their contribution to stormwater harvesting and their environmental value, it is very, very significant. I'd like to reiterate that fishing has always been a prohibited activity, not only at the Cargo Road wetland, which I think Councillor Prevotera is bringing attention to, but at all the constructed wetlands. And the blade signage has indicated this fact. The reason for the most recently installed signage is an attempt to reinforce the fact that fishing is prohibited and to prevent further destruction of vegetation and the disturbance to wildlife. Now, why is this important? There are 3 in particular very important reasons. I guess first and foremost is the vegetation that's planted throughout the wetland and particularly around the edges is very important in regards to water quality, taking up nutrients and pollutants. The second, no less important, is the habitat that has been created in the constructed wetlands, and again, both in the shallow areas, but in particular around the deep sloping sides of the main dam of the Cargo Road wetland that we're particularly talking about tonight. The northern, western and eastern sides in particular have been planted out originally with very dense vegetation. And we must remember that the third important feature, in fact, is that at the time that the Ploughman's wetland at Cargo Road was talked about, a public meeting on Ploughman's Lane, the main concern of residents at the time was the threat to safety of children who might wander off and inadvertently fall into the steep edges of the wetland. And council at the time made it very clear that vegetation would be made remain around the edges of the wetland. And that was implemented, and up to recent times this has proved very successful. What of course is happening now is that in more recent times, particularly the last 6 months, we're seeing an increase in recreational fishing and the knocking down of vegetation on the edge, particularly on the northern and western side, and most recently in the last couple of months on the eastern side. And despite putting up protective bunting, the bunting has been trashed, pulled down, and fishing has taken place. In an attempt, as I said earlier, to draw attention to the fact that fishing is prohibited, some additional signage, 2 additional signs were put up. What I'd like to do is to show you a couple of slides to finish off my presentation to you, to reinforce the issues that I'm making to you. And I hope that you will understand that recreational fishing poses a significant threat to the important role that the Ploughamers wetlands at Cargo Road and the other wetlands are playing. So please vote to protect the wetlands from fishing both now and into the future. And I'll just bring up a few slides to illustrate right, I would hope that the host would allow me to show these slides, but that's not occurring, which is very, very disappointing. I'm not sure if anyone can explain to me why I'm not able to show slides, but that appears that that's not to be the case. Well, let me describe the slides that we're going to show you. First of all, the slide shows the signage that was placed a month ago that said no fishing, and on that sign it clearly explained why fishing should not be allowed on the wetlands, the environmental damage and the risk that opening up the edge vegetation would occur. Other slides that I showed show the orange bunting that is on the western, northern and eastern side of the dam, and showing in a couple of cases where that bunting has been knocked over by people wanting to fish from the edges of the dam, knocking down the edge vegetation, particularly on the northern and western side, and opening it up where people could easily, and particularly children, could inadvertently access the water's edge, but reinforcing that it is a destruction of the habitat of this vegetation that is very critical to the success of the wetlands. And then finally, a couple of photos showing the overall significance of the vegetation in the wetland, the general habitat that's created with the benefits for wildlife, birds, aquatic life, and generally illustrating that when you focus on the dam of the wetland and not the peripheral areas, the swampy meadow to the south where there are some woody weeds, but particularly around the edges of the main dam, we need to protect it not only from the fishing that's occurring, but also, as we've struggled over the last couple of years, but we're addressing that in partnership with Council to protect the vegetation from off-leash dogs. And we've largely achieved that in the last 6 to 12 months. But as I said earlier, in recent months, the fishing is occurring on all sides of the dam, but particularly in 3 places, and this has caused significant damage to the vegetation, and it goes against the original intentions and plans that fishing would not be allowed at our constructed wetlands, and in particular where it's occurring at the Ploughamers wetland at Cargo Road. So I can't stress to you enough how important it is that we do not allow fishing to occur at these wetlands, and particularly at Cargo Road. Thank you very much, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Our next speakers, we have Daniel Cornby, who's the applicant for 153 to 157 Peasley Street, PA 54/2020. And we also have Amanda Rasmussen, who's also speaking. So who wants to speak first, Daniel or Amanda?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Amanda Rasmussen here.
Thanks.
If you wouldn't mind, it might be good that I go first, if that's okay.
You're right.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, CEO, Mr. David Waddell, directors and senior staff. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present at this evening's meeting. I act on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Daniel Cornby, in relation to the submitted application DA 54-2020 for 153 to 157 Peasley Street. The DA is for a new recreation facility for martial arts, and this request to council is for the consideration in varying the Orange Car Parking Development Contributions Plan 2015 for this proposal and in this instance. The request seeks to waiver the contributions imposed by any approval granted for the DA. The proposal is for the reuse of an existing commercial space within the commercial core of Orange. The site has a historic credit of 18 car spaces, with the development having a shortfall of 3.5 car spaces based on its intended use for recreation. The proposed hours of operation are weekdays 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. And on Saturdays, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. There'll be no operational hours on Sundays or public holidays. Furthermore, the applicant has indicated that the afternoon class will not commence prior to 4:30 p.m. All the remaining classes will take place outside of core business operating hours. Due to the site's location within the Orange CBD, patrons and staff have access to additional parking options within proximity to the site. This includes council-owned car parking facilities in Peasley Street, the corner of Lords Place and Kite Street, McNamara Lane, Peasley Street at the railway station, as well as availability of options for on-street parking in Kite Street, in proximity to Factory Espresso, Peasley Street between Kite Street and Summer Street, and Peasley Street south of the Kite Street intersection. Based on the applicant's intended hours of operation, the conflict for peak parking demand relates to the proposed early morning classes between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. and the afternoon class that commences at 4:30 p.m. And that's just Monday to Friday. Whilst it's recognised that this afternoon class is within the core commercial business hours, it is only one of several classes that are offered by the new business operation. It's considered that the afternoon class will not have an adverse environmental impact due to the due to the small shortfall of parking spaces for that one class, and the option for alternate short-term parking options in the locality for both drop-off and pick-up. The early morning classes have parking availability with classes ceasing prior to 9 a.m. That is the 9 a.m. peak parking period. The remainder of the classes are proposed to operate outside of the peak operational hours in the late afternoon, evening and on Saturday morning. By operating outside of these peak operational hours, there is negligible environmental impact for either the site or the surrounding locality, and ample availability for parking options for participants of the facility. As the development and recreation use promotes families and sibling participation, many of the students, particularly the afternoon class that clashes with the core business hours, will travel to and from the site together which allows for a slight reduction in traffic movements generated to and from the site. It's considered any shortfall in on-site parking based on the applied RMS rate is not likely to have an unacceptable environmental impact in the locality due to its intended operational hours and the significant availability of on-street parking in the area. Consideration of the proposal in post-COVID-19 times, with this as an emerging business trying to re-establish an operation within Orange.
Ms. Rasmussen, just interrupt you for a second
Yes.
to get a move. Mover, Councillor Nugent, seconded.
Munro.
Councillor Munro, all in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. You've got 2 minutes. All yours again, Ms. Rasmussen.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Consideration of the proposal in post-COVID-19 times, with this as an emerging business trying to re-establish an operation within Orange which allows for both physical activity and participation for improved mental and physical well-being. The applicants are not only providing a service for individuals, families and children, the operation also provides for diversity within the commercial core, is an emerging business enterprise and provides for the tenancy of another vacant commercial building. The proposal supports the local community and furthermore offers further employment opportunities. In conclusion, there is no increase in footprint of the buildings on site. The proposal relates to the reuse of an existing vacant building within the commercial core, and there are alternate options for both on-street parking through the use of nearby council car parks. The site's physical limitation in providing additional on-site parking and consideration of the proposed operational hours. Sorry, I've lost my place there. By allowing these factors, it's considered the site and locality would have negligible environmental impact by a shortfall of 3.5 car spaces. The car parking contribution cost is a heavy financial impost on the business, particularly based on the current economic climate. The applicant would be very grateful for the cost to be varied and waived in this instance, which would allow them to commence operation post-COVID-19. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Rasmussen. Bobby, would you like to say anything? Obviously not. Okay, well, thank you very, very much for our speakers. The council meeting resumes now. First of all, before we have confirmation of the minutes, Councillor Prevatero, you've got something you'd like to...
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to withdraw the Gosling Creek motion at this stage, and we'll get back to it later.
That's item 4.2, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, can we have a brief discussion about that in close?
You can bring your question up and closed if you like. Right, okay. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Orange City Council held on the 19th of May 2019. Councillor Munro, second. Councillor Nugent, all in favour?
Aye.
Aye, yes, thank you. The council meeting now adjourns to the conduct of the policy committees. First of all, we have Planning and Development Policy Committee, and the chairperson is Councillor Turner. All yours, Councillor.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Before we start, I was just wondering what happened to our prayer tonight. No one.
You're a little bit late arriving when there's no minister here tonight, and you weren't. I called on councillors to volunteer, and you weren't here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All yours.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Pleasure opening the Planning and Development Committee meeting at 7:24. We have an apology from Councillor, a
declaration of non-pecuniary interest from Councillor Kidd and Councillor Hamling on the Duntry League issue. Are there any other declarations? There being none, we go on to 2.1, which is general reports. 2.1.
Report.
Allocated, being moved by Councillor Whitten, seconded by
Yes.
Councillor Kidd. Is there any discussion on these items? No discussion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 2.2, planning proposal to amend the Orange Local Environmental Plan
Move the recommendation.
2011 for 185 Leeds Parade.
Second, Mr. Chair.
By Councillor Whitten, seconded by
Munro.
Councillor Munro. Any discussion?
Thank you.
As it's noted, it's only to change the zoning of the site, and we will have plenty of discussion later on. So there's no discussion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? There's no against. It's carried. 2.3, development application 153 to 157, Beasley Street.
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Second,
Councillor
Mr.
Nugent.
Second that, Councillor Hamling.
Seconded Councillor Hamling. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, on page 418, and we heard Ms. Rasmussen speak about the intended hours of operation or proposed hours of operation being Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 and night 4 to 9, and then Saturdays 7 to 1. But in the conditions, in the DA approval, when you look at the conditions, and particularly on page 439, condition of 12, it talks about the total number of hours that the gym could operate, that the gym won't operate outside of certain hours, which are sort of much longer and don't really reflect that. So through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director, can we just have a clarification about what the hours allow for, what the conditions allow for in terms of operation, hours of operation, and while the intended hours of operation are as stated on 418, does it mean that the gym could open longer further down the track without any further approvals?
Mr. Hodges, you would like to comment?
Yes, thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair. Short answer in relation to the last part of the question there. Would it mean with the conditions proposed, could the gym open for longer? Yes, there is more hours provided by that consent for the Saturday trading because it permits them to go to 5 o'clock. So I'm referring specifically to page 436. There's two conditions there proposed. And this is in trade-off of not applying a contribution of $26,000 for the parking. So trying to offset when the uses of the gym would be utilised, so where there's car parking, demand put on shops around it. So hours of operation, in short, are Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night, and also Saturdays 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. That is then restricted further by, so that's their blanket overall use. It's restricted down to during the key hours, so they can start, so between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., so the core hours through the day when they're needing to use the parking, restricting the intensity of having classes of not more than 18 people. So the application did ask for 40, but it's reduced it down to try and offset the impact of parking without making the applicant and the business pay $26,000.
Thanks, Mr. Hodges. Any other questions? No other questions. I'll motion. All those in favour? Against? Are there any against? I don't think so. Carried. Item 2.4, the Heritage Study Review.
Move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I need to declare I need to make a declaration here. I own a property in one of these amended areas. It's only just been brought to my attention so I'll be stepping out on this one.
Thank you, Councillor McRae.
I'll move, Councillor.
Moved by Councillor Nugent and seconded by Councillor Kidd. Any other discussion? Councillor Kidd.
Look, if I may, this has been taken a reasonable amount of time to get here and come back. Our first heritage study was done in about 1986, I think, and this is about our third review of it. And a lot of hard work has gone into this. And I think the most important thing, this is going out there for comment now, and undoubtedly there will be, but I think it's another major step forward for our beautiful city.
Thanks, Councillor Kidd. Anyone else? Councillor Nugent.
Yes, look, I suppose want to echo what the mayor just said. This is a really important document, and I think it's one of two very important documents that we're dealing with tonight, this one and the OC Future City. The OC Future City, of course, is about our future and revitalising our CBD while maintaining the heritage there, but and this one is about respecting our heritage and our history, and one of the elements of our city that attracts people to come here. So it is an important document. It's had a lot of input from the members of the Cultural Heritage Community Committee, and I look forward to the community more widely having the opportunity to have their say in what's proposed. I think it's a very comprehensive document, and there's a lot of work gone into it. And yeah, let's get it out there and see what the community have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent. Any other comments?
Councillor Privatera.
Yep. Councillor Privatera.
I've read the document as it is, and I think it's slightly underprepared because it will list equities that they like to see listed, but it doesn't give the reason why they want it listed. It just gives a brief description of the property and they want it listed, but not why they want it listed. And I think it's sort of missing a bit in it.
Okay, well, we'll see what other comments come up, and that it's going out on a public exhibition for 40 days, and that issue may also be raised by other people, Councillor Privatera.
Councillor Turner, can I just ask a question?
Yep.
For the life of me, I do have a bit of a quandary here to see within here they're listing what most people in this district consider as a noxious weed. Their heritage listing it, and that's briar or hawthorn, if you like.
I didn't pick that up.
I'm sure you all read that part in here where it talks about hawthorn.
I missed that little bit.
Yeah.
I'm assuming then you will be put in a submission.
Might be able to answer that question.
Yeah.
Mr. Hodges.
Mr. Mayor, the council's existing tree heritage tree inventory lists out the hawthorn plantings around the edges of farms. The document actually identifies it as a potential item that we might look at into the future. So it's not actually identifying them. We'll put them as just wants to look at them during this process.
Can I just suggest, Mr. Chair, and we look at it very seriously because it's one of the bushes that's largely been taken out right around because of the prolific amount of seeds that it produces. And if you look at some of the very, very good land around Orange, that was overtaken by hawthorn, quite prolific. And I think we'd have to be very, very careful in fact seeing it as heritage listed, unless it was within the Botanic Gardens or within a confined space where we control the birds getting the seeds off it.
Mm. So in amongst this report, is there anything about heritage listing rabbits as well, or blackberries? Or?
No, I didn't say anything on rabbits. I definitely saw the hawthorn.
Okay, any other comments? The only one I'd make was that interesting going down the Dalton Street crossing every day that the little gatekeeper's cottage is being listed, which is rather interesting given the surroundings of various vehicles around it all the time. But anyway, it'll be interesting. Okay. No other items. That completes the Planning and Development Committee meeting. I will close.
You've just got to move. You've got to move it, Russell. Councillor Turner.
You've got to vote.
CEO, is it?
You have to move it.
Who wants it?
I think Councillor Newton is trying to move the motion.
You have to move the motion.
Oh, right. I moved the motion that the Planning Development Committee, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Thank
Carried.
you.
That now completes the meeting. I will hand the meeting over to Infrastructure Policy and call on Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'll open the Infrastructure Policy Committee at 7:34. We have no apologies. We have no pecuniary interest declarations. Item 2.1 is current works.
I'll move that, Councillor Whitten.
Seconded by Councillor Whitten.
Seconded by Councillor Munro. Is there any discussion on current works?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment. I've noticed that the March Street roundabout is open now, so that's good to see. We've moved on with that. And I noticed I raised in council a couple of weeks ago the appearance and probably lack of completion of the Hill Street Matthews Avenue roundabout. I know that the light now has gone in there, so hopefully we'll see some sort of landscaping in there pretty quickly. But yeah, things are moving on that scene, so good.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Any other discussion? There being no other discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And I shall close the Infrastructure Policy Committee meeting.
Mr. Chair, could I raise one matter, please, Mr. Chair?
You may certainly do that, Mr. CEO.
Look, I'm sorry to do it at this point, but it does involve council infrastructure. Ms. Holly Manning spoke earlier about the farmers' markets occurring on the 13th of June. Now, your current council standing resolution is to not allow farmers' markets on council land. Now, should you, after hearing Ms. Manning, wish to allow them to have their markets on the 13th, a councillor would need to raise a motion allowing farmers' markets on council land. So sorry to do that now. It just occurs to me.
Councillor Mordo.
Councillor Nugent, happy to second that.
Councillor Mordo.
Can I just ask the question?
Yeah, I'd like to speak, please.
I'd just like to ask the question.
Yeah, Councillor Kidd.
Whether we can actually do that. That means
within 3 months
on the night. What we're doing here is right against what the policy is of raising an issue on the night and voting on it to allow it.
Well, it is a matter for you.
I'm just saying it sets a precedent, I can tell you, but I'm quite willing. I'm in the hands of the councillors.
I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a very bad precedent we're setting.
Well,
Councillor,
I would disagree. If I'm allowed to speak, please. I had my hand up first. I initially raised this issue when we decided not to allow people to hold their stores on council land, and I asked that we review it within a month, on a month-by-month basis, and I was told that wasn't required because the community or the people who wanted to run the stores would indicate to us when they wanted to start those stores. Now we're at a situation where those stores have come to us and said, look, we'd like to move forward and council to consider operating on their land again. I do appreciate what the other councillors are saying, but that was the reason why we asked in the first place, is to deal with it on a month-by-month basis. So we didn't get in this situation where we're going 3 months down the track and denying people, hard-working farmers and the like, an opportunity to sell their produce in what now would appear to be with the COVID restriction being eased. I think there is enough evidence that these people, farmers, are able to provide a safe environment to conduct their farmers market on the 13th of June 2020. And that is supported by the fact that the government is easing restrictions with regards to junior sport and training, and where they're now allowing people, and I know that my involvement in soccer is that we're allowed to train on in certain areas of soccer fields where we can have 40 people on a soccer field in different areas of it. So certainly when you look at what is happening, furthermore, come the June long weekend, my understanding after speaking to business people is that all the majority of
Councillor, if I may, I'm just going to pull you up there just for protocol purposes. As the chairman of this particular committee, I'm going to make a ruling on this particular issue and get feedback on council. I do respect what Councillor Kidd and Councillor Duffy have said. It is certainly going against the policy of raising motions within a 2-week period. But I'm going to, in the spirit of council, and as the chair, I'm going to allow, if somebody would like to raise a motion for or against, then I'll allow that, and then we'll let the debate go from there and see whether it gets up.
Oh, Councillor Hamling will move it.
So what are you moving, Councillor Hamling?
I'm moving that the markets be allowed on council land.
I'll second it, please. And I'd like to speak.
Order, Mr. Chairman, just a point of, to quote Councillor Duffy, a point of clarification. It's a resolution of council, so therefore wouldn't it not require a rescission motion?
That's what yeah.
And if it does require a rescission motion, how are we affected by the 3-month period? I'm not arguing either way at this stage. I just want to know procedurally where we stand as far as this is concerned.
What have we got, Mr. Waddell?
Mr. Chair. Just one moment. I'm going to allow the CEO to allow the point of order to be answered.
Yeah, so I'm just going to my email here. So the fact is that the standing resolution says that you resolved on whenever that meeting was. 1, that the report on COVID-19 by the CEO be noted. 2, that council not allow the farmers' markets to be held on council land. Now, for a rescission motion, you need to, a notice of motion to alter or rescind a resolution must be submitted to the GM no later than 12 p.m. on the preceding day after the meeting at which the resolution was adopted. So that has not occurred. So we're not...
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment, please.
Just one moment, Councillor. I'm allowing the CEO to answer the point of order.
So then I do not think a rescission motion is the way forward here. Therefore, a new motion would need to be created to allow the markets to go ahead on the 13th. Happy to be corrected. That's why we're in new motion territory.
I'll make a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Miledo's first.
Thank you. 4 people have got their hands up before you, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you.
Everybody just hold fire for 1 second, right? Just hold fire for 1 second because we need to
clarify we stand legally.
We need to understand what the CEO has just said. Now, the CEO is advising councillors that in his opinion, we don't need to have a rescission motion for this particular item. So in taking that on board, the advice of the CEO, I'm going to allow a motion to be placed. Now, Councillor Hamling, you were raising the motion. What was your motion?
To allow the farmers' markets to go back to to the showground land where they want to go.
Happy to second that motion.
Now,
Mr. Chair, Councillor Nugent. Yes, second, Mr. Chair.
Now, Councillor Miledo, you wish to speak?
Oh, look, I'm happy with the motion, but I think we should include a date in the motion, which will allow them to go back there.
There is a date of the 13th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Put the 13th in there.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, I just think to be safe, if the resolution were to read that council resolves to allow the farmers' markets to occur at the Naylor Pavilion on the 13th of June, subject to permitting, we will then, after this meeting, go and clean up the issue of all other council land.
And I think it needs to reflect the COVID-19, whatever the
restrictions
rules and regulations are of the day. Councillor Hamling, you happy with that change to your motion? Councillor Duffy.
Mr. Chairman. My question is about, I'm of the belief that you cannot bring an item back in because for the 3-month period is up. Is that correct?
That is.
Oh, well, at the end of the day, Councillor Duffy, we are the council. Certainly, I respect the policy, but we live in some. We're not in normal times, so I think for the spirit of the council and the community as a whole, I think we need to be a little bit flexible. And if the CEO allows us to, for this particular meeting and to make some changes on the fly, I think we need to be a bit sensible about it. But I respect your feedback, Councillor Duffy. You're right. We have a policy in place, and please carry on.
Through you, Mr. Chair,
just one moment, Councillor Maletta. You've already spoken. I'm just letting.
I hadn't finished though, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, well.
Are you denying me? You're saying that I can't finish what I was going to say?
You've already spoken, Councillor Maletta. I'll just have the CEO put you on mute for a moment if you like. Now,
point of order, Mr. Chair. I think Councillor Maletta was cut off in the middle of his saying what he was saying, and should be allowed to continue.
You can say whatever you like. Mr. CEO, you're controlling the meeting at the moment. Could you put the councillors on mute until I give you the permission to allow them to speak, please? So we can have some order here. Councillor Duffy, you were finishing.
Right, talk. You're good now.
Am I talking? I'm happy with the question. I'm happy with the answer you provided as chair and the CEO. They said, look, let's disregard it because we're living in extraordinary times.
Maletta. Councillor Maletta.
Yes.
You may speak, sir.
Oh, thank you very much for that. My point was going to be, which I want to raise, if there was a technical issue with it, what I was proposing to do was to offer other councillors the opportunity to participate in an extraordinary meeting during the week to resolve the issue.
Oh, well, that's a waste of time because we're already going to deal with it now. Councillor Nugent, did you have your hand up?
I did have my hand up, and so does the Mayor. Look, all I was going to say was that from my understanding of the public health orders, farmers markets have always been allowed. And my understanding or my memory of that particular motion where we didn't allow it to go ahead was that it only related to that particular farmers market. It was only for that one farmers market, but I may be wrong.
Councillor Kidd. Wait there, Mr. Mayor, you're on mute. Somebody's got you on mute. We need the Mayor unmuted.
Janessa, can you unmute the Mayor, please? Ready, Mr. Mayor.
Is that working now?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'd ask the CEO to let the staff know that that is not to be muted. Overall, I'm in charge of this meeting and I do not want it muted, thank you. I have no trouble with the farmers markets operating at that site. All I wanted to bring forward is a procedural thing and a policy thing that says what should have happened even prior to this evening if somebody would have come in and said they want to hold the farmers markets on that weekend of the 13th. You can't move a motion just on the night from the floor. Now, if we start doing that, irrespective of the circumstances, I know what's going to happen. Everyone will say that it's an extraordinary reason that they're going to have to move a motion from the floor. I'm quite comfortable with the farmers markets operating. I have no trouble whatsoever. But I think we need to have a look at what that came out of that resolution. And if it's just a fact, if it was just that one date that we didn't allow it on, there's probably no reason for, no need for one anyhow. as Councillor Nugent said, but I haven't got it in front of me, I'm afraid. That's my fault, because I didn't know that it was going to come up to me to this evening until, well, I didn't even know that. I knew that we're going to have Ms Holly Manning speaking to us tonight, but I didn't know what about. So it's a bit hard for me to make, well, it's not too hard to make a decision, but I want to make sure that I'm doing it correctly and procedurally correct.
Mr CEO, before I get Councillor Taylor to speak, and can you get everybody off mute? You've got them all on mute, mate.
I don't. Janessa does, I think. Janessa, please. Thank you. Just a couple of things. The resolution said, resolve, the second part was that council not allow the farmers markets to be held on council land. The matter of a new motion, that's only if it's been rescinded. You can't lodge a new one within 3 months. So I'd like to apologise. This is clumsy, I know, but it is. It did come to my attention as Mrs Manning was speaking. I heard the date 13th, so I'll take full responsibility for this. Procedurally, you are okay to do this motion. And by wording it for the third, you can either word it for the 13th or you can reopen the council land. Up to you, councillors.
Councillor Taylor. You're either on mute. You're not on mute because there's no red bar there.
Yeah, it is on mine. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, it's on mine. It says on mute. Yeah.
We need to get Councillor Taylor on the air.
Ms Constantine, can you unmute every councillor, please?
They are now unmuted. However, they need to accept the unmute when it pops up on their screen.
Would councillors accept the unmute? Thank you.
Mr Chairman, I just want to reflect what the Mayor said, and I agree with him 100%. I mean, I will support a motion to reinstate the farmers' markets back to the showground. I don't have a problem with that at all, but I do have concerns procedurally about how we're going about it here. Several councillors have pointed out tonight too that it does create a precedent, and it does create one. And you can't have your cake and eat it. In hindsight, you can't have your cake and eat it and say, well, look, this is not unprecedented. So if someone does take advantage of this tonight, well, so be it in the future. That's the risk we're taking. But the fact of the matter is we are in, I'll get back onto the motion when it's put forward, we're in different times to what we were quite a few weeks ago. Thankfully, we are. We don't know whether we might return to those times that we've seen just a few weeks ago with restrictions. But I'm quite happy at the moment. I think things have changed enough at this point on this night to say that we could allow the farmers' markets to return. But, Mr Chairman, I really have concerns procedurally because we are in unprecedented times, because we are in difficult times. It doesn't excuse the fact that there was a motion put forward. It is a resolution of council. Whether it's a resolution of council to allow the farmers' markets to return or a resolution of council to adopt its budget, for instance, it's a resolution. A resolution is a resolution, and I would imagine there would be no one, or I'm just assuming there will be nobody that will dispute this decision or want to argue it, because I'm afraid they would win if they tried to take this on procedurally.
Thank you. Councillor Romano.
My concern is the legality of it. I'm happy to proceed, but if we're not breaking any law by having more than so many people grouped up, there is condition on how many people can be in the same premises at the moment. So we've got to take that into consideration. But I'm happy to support the motion.
Certainly. Thank you. Councillor Turner, I think you've got your finger up.
Thank you, Councillor Whitten. I'm quite happy to support the motion. I'd still like it, with all this talk about legality, etc., is there something can we put something in the motion that we accept it in good faith or whatever? If, however, it is deemed tomorrow or whatever, what we've done is illegal, that we have the capacity to call an extraordinary meeting to solve that issue, just in case. I don't know. it's all very messy. We all wanted to proceed. I think we do, but we're just a little bit concerned about the legality of it. As far as the numbers and the social distancing on the day when it goes ahead, that will be up to the farmers market to police the social distancing. I would understand, and I'm sure that they would do it very responsibly, and the council need to get involved in that side of it.
Councillor Munro.
Oh, thank you. Look, all I'd like to say is it's true what people have been saying. It is extraordinary times. It's true. This COVID's the only reason we'd ever do this. Make a motion like that to not have these markets on our land. If the state and federal government can change the goalposts daily, well, so can we as far as this little matter goes. So as far as I'm concerned, let's all show a little bit of leadership, all put our hands up and support it, because I think it's a good thing, unless the government comes in and says, well, there's another outbreak and you're going to have to stop it. So if you just think of the language on the TV, national TV, statewide, whatever, on government policy, and it's sort of doing a very good job in my mind by pulling it back a little bit and pulling it back a little bit. I think we can also do the same thing. So I'd like everyone to put their hand up, be unanimous. And under these times, extraordinary things, we do have a different outcome. It's not usual times. So let's all please support this and, end the debate. I think that's the only way to go. Thank you.
Councillor Kidd.
Look, I'd just like to point out one comment that was made there. This is not about leadership by any of us. I think I was, in fact, questioning the policy, the procedure and the legality of doing it. I am in favour of it, and I take exception to that.
Oh, no, I didn't say you didn't, Mr. Mayor. Honestly, didn't think you did. I know exactly the premise of what you were saying, and I agree with it, but let's get it done.
All righty. There being no further discussion, it's been very robust and informative. And certainly you're entitled to vote against it. And I do respect the fact that we are certainly going against procedure. And I'm sure that the General Manager will come back to us after this and tell us that we were way out of order. And I appreciate all of your input. And I'll put the motion for Councillor Hamling's motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against, please raise your hand. And thank you very much. I will close the meeting of the Infrastructure and Policy Committee meeting, and I will ask for Councillor Privatera to conduct the environmental sustainability meeting. Thank you, Councillor Privatera.
I would like to open the Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee on the 2nd of July, time being 7:58. Does any council have a pecuniary interest, significant non-pecuniary interest, or less than significant non-pecuniary interest in any matter listed for consideration at tonight's meeting? No, that's good. Item 2.1.
Happy to move with the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Look, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just on page 6, I think that's really good information that I'd like to see go out in the media, because we quite often get copped, we're not doing this and we're not doing that. Look, we've got solar systems already installed on 7 sites and what they total in the kilowatt hours. We're looking at another 26 sites. And if you look at our percentage and have a look at what we're doing with the street lights and how much we're saving annually, and look through, it's quite absolutely incredible just in the area of solar. I think that's a good story, actually.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Mr. Mayor. It's a great story, and a story that needs to be told. Even just the replacement of streetlights, the savings there are remarkable. Yeah, all in all, council's been doing a good job in this area. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you all.
All in favour?
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, have we lost Councillor Duffy? I can't see him on my screen, or am I on a different screen?
Been off for a long while.
I can't see him either.
He's gone. He went a while ago.
I am told he has a connection problem and will return.
Got a what?
Connection problem and will return.
He's got more than that.
Yeah.
That's awful.
He's in my office, isn't he? Okay.
Through your drawers.
Got into the executive bar fridge.
I'm sure you won't get anything.
So I think Councillor Privatera has been put on mute in the middle of chairing the meeting.
No, he's not.
Have you finished, Councillor Privatera?
You, Mr. Council, are responsible for the aggressive muting policy.
Yes, I've closed the meeting, and Councillor Whitten will take the Finance Policy Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Privatera. Councillor Duffy, you're back. Thank you. It's good to see you back. We're getting worried. I'll open the Finance Policy Committee meeting at 8:01. We have no apologies. We have non-pecuniary declarations from Councillor Kidd and Councillor Hamling. I don't believe they're going to leave the meeting. Am I correct, guys? Sorry, councillors. Item 2.1, request for financial assistance from Lifeline Central West.
I'll move.
Second.
Been moved by Councillor Kidd, seconded by Councillor Turner.
Can I just ask
on this matter?
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Certainly, Councillor Kidd.
Look, I would like at a council meeting later on just to have Lifeline do a presentation to us. You know, they do a great job, and I can imagine just what it's been like in the last 12 months, 15 months or so. And I was just wondering, I wrote down here today, look, is this adequately funded by state government? I think it's a critical service and a very, very important service. But I just don't know if it's funded adequately or not, whether there's sufficient staff or, you know, actually what it is. Service such as this, so I'd hate to think that they're having to go around to council and other means of raising money to run the service. So I'd like your support in asking at some time if Lifeline or if we get the CEO, get one of the senior staff to come back with a bit of report. I don't know. It could be one of the councillors know how it is actually funded and how it's actually resourced. Does anyone answer that?
I was wondering that myself.
It's government and fundraising, Mr. Mayor, I believe, both.
It'd be good to get some feedback on it, because I think I'd be quite willing on behalf of council, if we got your support, to take this up to the government. I think it's a critical service right across the state, and that's proven right across, whether it be in, you know, if you think about the circumstances the last 3 or 4 years with fires and then drought and now COVID, in some areas you could throw drought into that flood also. So I just don't know how it's funded. Obviously, it's not adequately funded.
Yeah, and I think that the service they provide, like we often, too many times, we hear the sad stories in the community about. But we never imagine the lives they do save. We don't hear about the number of people they do save. You know.
Yep.
Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I totally agree with your point of view there. I also believe that Lifeline provide a vital service for people experiencing mental health issues, and in particular in response to COVID-19 pandemic, which we experience at the present time. I've spoken to people in the profession, and they certainly have indicated to me that there's an increase in people calling for assistance. So I would like to encourage all councils to support this request for financial assistance.
Councillor Nugent.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I support the recommendation. It is obviously going outside the policy, but I think again, we're in extraordinary times, and I think this is a very worthy cause. Just on a sort of personal note, my dad set up Lifeline in Rockhampton back in the 1960s, or late 60s, early 70s, and at one stage I was a Lifeline counsellor in Canberra. And those services, in my experience, run on the smell of an oily rag. And I think anything we can be doing to sort of advocate for better funding for those services. I think I was reading just in the paper maybe, or just recently, that they've experienced 20%, 25%, 30% increase in calls over the COVID-19 period. So it's very much in demand, and it's a very important service.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent. Any further speakers? No further speakers. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against?
Sorry, Councillor Whitten.
Carried. Councillor Kidd.
Sorry, I didn't. I would have liked to have a point 4 in there, that we have someone from Lifeline or one of our staff give us a report on how it's actually funded and what we can actually do to support further funding and adequate resource funding for Lifeline in the West or across the state.
Okay.
So, item 4.
All councillors will be happy with that. Mr. CEO, you've got that?
Yep.
You've got that point? Thank you. We move on to item 2.2, which is request for financial assistance, Duntry Golf Club.
Moved.
It's been moved by Councillor Munro.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Turner. Any discussion on this matter? Councillor Mileto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to speak against the recommendation due to the fact that Country League, my understanding, it's privately owned. I know that we do sometimes go outside the policy, but I don't believe it's in the best interest of the ratepayers of this community to be funding such a request. I also believe that approving this request may also set a precedent for other privately owned businesses to make similar applications. I'm just wondering whether one of the directors could provide me with a bit of an update here. Is my understanding that a couple of years ago that the Orange City Council also lent Duntry League a considerable amount of money, which is still outstanding. Is that the case?
Mr. Redmond is answering the questions on this one. That is the case, yes.
Mr. Redmond, would you like to add anything to that?
Here he is.
Only that, yeah, that's true. That's what occurred. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but happy to circulate if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. And just with regards to the request with regards to diverting water, is Director Greenham able to indicate if we were to experience 25 mil of water, how much would that put in their dam?
I haven't worked out the catchment details in that detail, but what it would do would act as another form of flood mitigation for that particular area. It's at the top of the catchment, that section, and really represents less than 1% of our Orange City catchment. So it would have negligible effect on the wetlands, but that section of town is also part of the older section of town. So I wouldn't be surprised if those the existing stormwater pipeline are undersized. And
could we open up? Sorry, could we open up for the purposes of fishing?
No. I doubt they're fishing the dam.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mileto. Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Councillor Mileto has hit on the note I was going to ask about. I have similar concerns regarding a privately owned club receiving the benefit of the ratepayers' funds in this way. I think it does set a precedent that would be interesting for many of our other sporting clubs in relation to stormwater use and their own dams being set up for them. But I do actually think I could support it if there was the opportunity for it to come back, including the opportunity to expand the use, including recreational fishing. I know that has been something that's of quite concern to a number of members of our community. If it's only 1% of our catchment, this could be dedicated to fishing. 5.1 megalitre dam, I believe, would be quite appropriate. Could be appropriately stocked with species. And of course, the issue with, as I believe Neil Jones spoke to, with the ploughman's wetlands being used for fishing is in relation to the safety of children, issues with habitat. Now, as I could see it, this kind of location would be ideal. It's safe for children. It's utilising the stormwater and the storage dam. There'd be no impact on any habitat. Arguably, it's being paid for by council and could be open, therefore, to more ratepayers, more residents, community usage. And of course, if it was suitably stocked with appropriate species, I'm not sure whether a point 3.6 might be added to include stocking of appropriate fish species could be added if somebody was willing to make that amendment. But of course, if it's going to be, they want to keep it private and for use solely of the golf course and for watering of the golf course, and I would think it would be funded by them. But if it was open to further community usage, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with this. It's actually a great opportunity to provide recreational fishers with a new fishing site, really central to Orange. Win-win situation.
Thanks you, Councillor McRae. It probably might be a bit dangerous, golf balls flying around with your head, but you certainly have the power to put an amendment in if you wish to on that matter. Sorry, I'm just going around here. Councillor Nugent, I think you may be next, and then Councillor Duffy and Councillor Munro.
Look, I have concerns about this recommendation as well. With respect to Mr. Greenham, he referred to it being negligible or minimal diversion from our stormwater, but at a time when we're still at only about 25%, just above 25% of our combined water storage, I think any diversion of water from our stormwater harvesting scheme is not a good look. The letter from the club talks about expanding the dam from a 1.9 to 5.1 megalitre dam, and it also being interconnected to other water storages on site with store a total of 36 megalitres, which is a fair bit of water. That's 4.5 days worth of Orange's water. So, so we're not going to be filling up all of that water storage with the stormwater harvesting, but I just think any diversion of stormwater harvesting at this stormwater from the stormwater harvesting scheme at this point in time is not a good look, and so I don't feel I can support it.
Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I have no hesitation in supporting this. Number one, we're talking about Duntry League here. Duntry League is a golf course that's known right throughout New South Wales and other parts of Australia, and giving them the extra water to keep that golf course looking smick and span, which people just travel to, come here specifically stay for that, I think it's money well spent.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Munro, then Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'm in support of the idea. I think if the road wasn't there and we didn't have curb and guttering taking the water past this point where it naturally would have flown into that area, into that dam, they would have had the water anyway. So in actual fact, as far as I look at it, we've actually diverted the water by putting curb and guttering there. I think it's a good idea to be able to save the greens of this pristine Duntry League golf course. We've just been through a terrible drought, and having an idea of what they grow grass in a drought and where they could hold this water and keep the greens nice and the gardens at Duntry League beautiful, tourism. You think about the hundreds of millions of dollars that it brings to our town, even if it's just in advertising. We put Duntry League up there on the front page of all of our advertising. I just say it's a little bit of money for a great big opportunity for Duntry League to be self-sufficient in its water. and just have a little think about where the water would have ran without the curb and guttering there, if it would have gone in there or not. I'd say it would. So all I'm saying, all we're doing is returning the water to where it would have gone anyway. When we have heavy rain, it'll fill and it'll go over into our water catchment, our wetlands, else in any case. And as you know, over the last period of time, we've had good rain, and I can tell you very much so as a farmer and somebody that's got a dam that's been running over for a month. All the dams underneath my dam are full, and so is the creek. So I'm just saying, I think this is a good opportunity to give a little bit for an institution that does a terrible lot for Orange. And I think it's aside from the other issue of the loans that Duntry League have taken. This is something they're trying to show self-determination and their own leadership in trying to be able to maintain their course. So for me, I support this motion, and I hope that other councillors can see my point, because if we don't support this golf course, we're down to 2 now. We want it to stay there for eternity, and we want it to be a successful, beautiful place as it has been. I just think about what we've just been through, and I know what it's like when you've got no water and you've got to sell your stock and all the rest of it. Their greens go bad, they can't water them, they've got to purchase the water then off Orange City Council to do it. And we'll
Councillor Taylor, can I mute Councillor Munro now?
Yes, you can.
You can implement your aggressive
You got
policy.
the idea.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Very well spoken. Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly on the water, as Mr. Greenham said, this might take about 1% of the water that potentially flows out of Orange. It's not as if we are stormwater harvesting the other 99%, nowhere near it. I think it's less than 20% at the moment until other catchment areas get involved in the scheme. But getting back to Duntry League, don't forget that it is an icon. It is a public course. It is a public land, so to speak, in a lot of ways. It is open for people out of Orange as far as tourism. It brings in hundreds of golfers for the weekend that stay at the guest house and other motels. Many people that use Wirraburra Walk to the west of Duntry League then complete their walk by walking up through Duntry League. It's just a small way that we can help another business in town that's struggling at the moment. The pipes are already, I understand, the pipes are already down at the works depot. We haven't even got to buy them. I think it's a very small amount to support an icon. The Duntry League Guest House is an icon. It is heritage listed. They can't afford to do the maintenance on it that needs to be done. So just let's support them in this small way and help them get out of the crisis that they, many other businesses in Orange, are going through.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Kidd.
Look, I'd just like to make a point on a comment a previous councillor just made. Those 2 magnificent sporting fields off Cox Avenue, which are on Kinross Wallaroi, you know, they're retention basins that were paid for by Orange City Council.
Yes, they are.
I'm aware of that, Mr. Mayor.
Take them through. Yeah, saved hundreds of dollars and made 2 magnificent and a whole heap of sporting fields. That's at Kinross Wallaroi, a private school. We also, as a council, supported Wentworth Golf Course some years back, and it put in a toilet block right up on the top on the eastern end, on the conditions that they had the gates open there. So the Landcare Group, which is called Daru Landcare Group when it started, could access those toilets when they were doing work in that space there. The council has also supported Waratah Sports Club on 2, if not 3 various occasions because of the amount of sporting facilities it provides in a whole range of areas in Orange. So I think it is not unusual, and I can give you a more comprehensive list than that. And I think the other important one, it is quite one of, as is Wentworth and as is Brabham area. It's not only that the sport that's played on there, there are very, very important green spaces that we have within our city that people utilise to go for walks with their dogs. and attract bird life and other forms of things. So, and that corner, by the way, anyone who lives out that area would know when we have heavy rain on that corner, it floods on the left-hand side, which is on the western side.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just also will endorse what the Mayor just said. It's not unprecedented that council has supported private sporting organisations in this town and private organisations generally. I mean, the other one that the Mayor didn't say was the arrangement that council have had for many years and been a successful arrangement with Kinross and Gosling Creek. Spring Creek Reservoir. So, you know, it's not unprecedented. It is iconic, as Councillor Turner said, and it's in the best interest of this community that we can support the club there, because if we can support them to maintain the course, that gives them just that bit more wriggle room to be able to keep it a viable tourist attraction for the city. So I think it's a positive. It's something that will benefit, and something, Mr. Chairman, that has come out of the last drought. It's something everyone knows that we've got to be more water wise, and I think everyone from farmers right through to councils to the community generally know now that we can't just sit back and wait for it to rain anymore. We have contingencies in for the next drought, because there will be another drought.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. There being no other speakers, I'll just concur with the speakers about the importance of the Duntry League, I suppose, as an icon to the city and who it brings to the city. And certainly council in my time have given our support to every sporting code in this city, and golfing is a sporting code. And certainly we've helped out the Waratahs, the work we've done at Jack Brabham, all of the sporting codes. So with that, I'm going to put the motion of all those in favour. Please raise your hand. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against. The motion is carried. Thank you for your participation, and I will close the Finance Policy Committee at 8:21 and ask for the Mayor to resume normal council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Councillor Kidd.
Thanks, Councillor Whitten. We move on to item 4. First of all, 4.1 is the notice of motion is the removal of no fishing signs, Flowers Creek wetlands. Would you like to move that, Councillor Prevatara? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'll move the motion.
Have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Romano. Any speakers for? Councillor Munro?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the division.
Yes,
Yep.
Councillor Munro.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, look, on this issue, I see a great opportunity to stop kids having fun and doing what kids should be doing by fishing in a creek close to their home. I think is a good thing. So I would propose that we change the sign and start an education program for the kids to fish for introduced species and educate a little bit. I don't know how I could do that, but maybe patrol here and there and talk to people in the area and let them understand the volatility of some of the area. But I think these sorts of things should be used. Now, for me, growing up, I was always going fishing and swimming and whatever. I got a great understanding of nature and learning about life by doing that. And I think if we take that away from our kids, we can't have this and we can't do this and we can't do that, I think it's a terrible indictment on us. I think we should be encouraging kids to do these sorts of things that most of us probably did when we were young, and have some education on which fish to throw back, give a kiss and throw back, and which ones to get out, because in most of our estuaries, we have a lot of introduced species that make a terrible lot of environmental damage. And I think it could be a great asset to have people, especially go along with their mums or dads, throw a line in and be responsible in doing so. So I've got no issue with that. But I think because it's our wetlands, I think we should have signs that indicate and educate people on what species to put back and which ones to catch, and they'll be doing us a favour. And I do think that it's an important part of growing up is to go and have a look at nature and appreciate it through these sorts of activities. So that's what I think.
Thanks, Councillor. I think Councillor Mileto was next. I might just remind, there's no fish in there. Councillor Mileto.
Doesn't matter. At least
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak against the motion. Basically, I go back to what the original intent of the wetlands was, and it was always been fishing was being prohibited in there. And I believe that Lake Canobola, Scosson Creek would be more suitable venues to what the wetlands would be. I also have concerns with regards to the impact of fishing hooks in that area, what they're going to cause. If they get snagged on reeds and things like that, or getting swallowed by wildlife such as birds or ducks or things like that. When you've got children who are fishing and walking into water and through reeds and that, they're not going to be walking through their shoes, and I would imagine if it's water, they're going to be walking with no shoes, you would think at times. So I'm concerned about children getting impaled with hooks, which are snagged on reeds and vegetation within the water. So they're my concerns, and the impact it's going to have on the wildlife there, with birds eating that the bait or whatever has been caught in the reeds and getting hooks and that caught in their throats, and birds and that. I mean, what type of impact's that going to have on what we're trying to achieve? So I can't support it in this current format.
Thanks, Councillor Mileto. Councillor Privatera.
I'd like to talk for the motion. We're mainly talking about a handful of children fish there. The damage they cause is insignificant compared to the feral animals that roam that area, and also pets, and also other people just walking through that area. Not all people stick to the paths; they walk through on the banks and everywhere else. And also in recent months with COVID-19, it's given the children something they can do quite safely and out of social distance with everybody. I don't see a problem with them fishing, which they have done now I've seen them there for a couple of years, just fish and cause no problems to anyone.
I think Councillor Nugent was next. Thanks, Councillor Nugent. Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I appreciate the intent of the motion and what Councillor Privatera is suggesting. The wetland is a real, it's a very special place. I think there was a fair bit of controversy when we originally decided to build it, in terms of setting up a wetland and setting up a stormwater harvesting scheme. But now, it's a place. It's one of the very special places that we have in Orange. I think that a lot of people really appreciate. And I think a lot of kids do already appreciate it. I know we have orienteering events down there with kids running through the wetland. I think a lot of kids enjoy riding their bikes through there, and I'm sure they explore the area and enjoy the nature, the natural environment, as Councillor Munro has said. But whether we need to have fishing as an additional activity there is, in my mind, I don't think it is necessary. And I do have some, just in terms of the motion, it talks about removing the recently installed signs so that, once again, to allow fishing at the wetlands. But as has been pointed out by Councillor Mileto and Mr. Jones earlier, fishing's never been allowed in that area. It's always been prohibited since the wetlands were built, is my understanding. So by just removing those signs won't allow fishing to go ahead or won't legalise fishing in the area, just like removing signs around a bus stop doesn't allow you to park in a bus stop. So I think there's, some inherent concerns about the way the motion's worded. The other thing is that, again, Mr. Jones alluded to, is that we've got a ploughman's wetlands care group there that has formed and has been very active in managing and maintaining that area. And this motion has come sort of pretty much out of the blue for them. We've got a Parks, Trees and Waterways Committee, which I, would have thought might have had some input or some say on whether to allow fishing in this wetland area or any other wetland area in the city. And the wetland is principally a stormwater harvesting facility. So to me, that's the most sort of important point. Well, it's an excellent sort of facility because it has that functional capacity as well as being a recreational area. So it serves dual purposes. And I think it works pretty well at the moment. So I suppose I'd just like to finish with a question. If we were to allow fishing there, given that it's currently prohibited, just removing the signs isn't going to allow that to happen. So what steps would have to occur to allow fishing at the wetlands?
Education.
Well, I think that's a question come back. Who else had the hand up? Councillor Turner, wasn't it?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Turner, then Councillor McRae. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Speaking against the motion, I agree, and it's not very often I find myself in this situation. I agree fully with the former Councillor Jones tonight and what he said. We've got to remember, well, why these wetlands were constructed in the first place. They were there to improve the quality of the water for our stormwater harvesting. They were there to promote ducks and bird life and all the little bugs and everything else that can live in the wetlands that we hear from time to time that cats are getting in there now, dogs are getting in there now and killing bird life, etc., etc. All we can do to stop that or discourage cats and dogs from getting in there, and the best way, I believe, to discourage that is to keep the undergrowth around the wetlands, around the water, around the lake, whatever you want to call it, as much as possible. And if we're going to start letting kids in there or even adults in there, tramping it down and getting in and doing the fishing, and it's interesting as your comment about there's no fish in there anyway, they certainly were introduced illegally in the first place if they are there. So there's plenty. I've been out there a few times, and every time people are using those wetlands, they're using the paths. Let's keep it to what it was designed for in the first place, and that wasn't for fishing.
Sorry, Councillor McRae. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm unsure about whether fishing's appropriate in the wetlands. I must admit I've learned a lot tonight from those who've spoken before me. But what I am interested in is the consistency. So last meeting, we deferred a matter of entrance signs to refer it to the Parks, Trees, Waterways Committee, who'd previously been discussing it. Now, I would think that this is a pretty clear example of a matter that would fall under the consideration of that committee, particularly as they would represent the different views and perspectives of our community members relating to whether there's an interest in additional fishing locations. And if fishing is going to be permitted there, the best way to introduce it, be the perhaps champions for the education campaign, and certainly that would be supportive in terms of looking at funding any decking or requirements to allow appropriate setup so people can do it safely. So I'd vote against it at this point. I'd like to actually see it come from the Parks, Trees and Waterways Committee, or have consultation with them in relation to establishing fishing if it is indeed warranted. But I did mention there's other waterways. New stormwater dam at Duntry League might be an option. I think it actually is quite closely located to a road. It'd have great access. It'd be a fantastic location.
We do have more safety issues then.
I'll speak next. Look, just a couple of things, I suppose. The Director of Technical Services can answer this one. Is Cray dabbing fishing?
Yes.
I asked him, is it? is crabapping fishing.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got Rex Hunt on board.
Because I've seen a number of kids down there doing things that I've seen happen all over the place where, you know, whether you catch one or not, it's just a bit of fun with kids getting around. Now, I spent about 2 hours down in there again today and had a look around the outsides and around the surface. I've seen adults ride up on the edge of the water, not fishing. I've seen them there giving their dog a drink of water. Now, if you go down and have a good look around the outsides, and I've got the photos that I will show you, that where I found all this dog hair around where, and I would imagine that would possibly be just some kids from one of those neighbouring places around there that have been over there with their friends, having games, making a cubby house or whatever, all the sorts of things that kids will actually do. And that will cause, I have no doubt in my mind, that will cause some flattening of the vegetation and that. Now, that happens, that is going to happen. From course, do we have to start putting signs around there? No children allowed in here. I've already heard that mentioned to me by some people. Some people want the wetlands for themselves and nobody else. Nobody else is allowed to be there. It's our wetlands.
Yeah.
Some of those are the same people when that was built and it was a constructed wetland, and it wasn't originally built for stormwater harvesting. It is part of the stormwater harvesting, as is all the water that comes from all down that way. It was originally built on the idea of director Michael Ryan, because that was an absolute horror place. That was blackberries, rubbish, and they found out after 30 years it was a travelling stock reserve, and someone had been using it for about 40 years to run cattle on at extraordinary stocking rates. It was a mess, and developed under a lot of criticism at the time. But one of the really good things is quite often when these things do evolve out of criticism, the people that give the criticism then quite often take it on, which is good. But in this case now, I just don't want to see down the track that, you know, this is part of learning with kids and with their parents and they're going around. I think some of the damage that's done in there is done more by adults, to be quite frank, and dogs, from what I looked at today. And I did have a real good look and took lots of photos of blackberry. I also seen some scats of foxes. And then last weekend when I was up there with a friend and we actually watched, I saw foxes and I saw cats. They're going to cause, if we can't control those in there, more damage than any adult or any child's going to cause on the bird life or anything like that. So I think it's a balancing act all around. Yeah. And the question was asked about the fishing. Well, there is no fish in there, right, at this stage. And highly unlikely there would be. And I think the big thing with some kids fishing and mucking around is just the fact that they're doing something to me and not playing on a computer or sitting at home. It's part of growing up and having a good time. Yeah. And I think the emotive arguments, a child may fall in and drown in there and all that, that comes up every 3 or 4 years. That applied to the duck pond in Cook Park. It applies to the, stormwater channel that goes through Orange. There's no such thing as completely risk-free.
That's part of growing up.
It's part of growing up. So, look, in my case, look, do we put signs up that fishing's allowed here? I don't agree with that. But I don't see why, if there's some kids in there that were actually fishing, it's better education to say to the kids, hold it, listen, stay away from that area for whatever the reason may be. There may be a bird nesting there or whatever, and educating the kids. To come the big stick attitude, no fishing, and next thing, because I've had people ringing me up there saying, I saw these kids down there, you should be going around there. I've driven up and the kids are about 7 or 8 year old, out there having a good time, and you've got to, you say to the kids, look, and I find that a terrible thing to have to do. So it's a hard balancing act, but I don't believe we have signs up that this is fishing. I can't see the Wyangler Fishing Club or the Orange Fishing Club having a weekend fishing tournament down on the wetlands. What we're talking about here is a few kids that would go in there at various times, might be cray-dabbing or fishing, and they're not going to cause as much damage as some of the people that go in there and take their dogs right over and give them water.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, Councillor Privatera. Sorry, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with everything said. What I'm concerned about with Orange is that I believe it's turning into a retirement village, and I'm hearing that from a lot of people. This is about kids having a great time, and I understand that the kids that were spotted down there live in those houses nearby. So, you know, we're going on about the wetlands. What's the difference between that dam, because that's what it is, and let's say Spring Creek or Gosling Creek? It's the same thing, isn't it? That holds water. This talk about the weeds are going to purify the water, I don't understand that. It's just doesn't make sense to me. It's nothing more than a holding pond. When it fills up, it spills out, or it goes into the next one, and then it gets pumped into the cleaning pond up near the Sooner Park Dam. When I was infrastructure chair, I went up and had a look at all that. But they're making this to be such a big deal. There's a lot of hype about it. All the community is saying is that if kids want to go there and throw a line in or pretend to catch a fish, take a few photos, take a packed lunch, and spend the day away from the computer. Social distancing at the moment, as Councillor Prevatera said earlier, it's also a very important issue. I can't see the problem. Now, I have seen foxes go in and out of there. I drive by there nearly every night. It's not far from my place. I have seen cats in and out of there. I've seen dogs running around loosely without any people managing the dogs. So there's all sorts of things that are happening there. But yet we're stopping kids from having a bit of fun. And that's all it's about. And let me just remind the councillors of something else that's very important. Several months ago, the council staff did a survey on what the people of Orange want. What's the most important thing to the people of Orange? And you know what number one was? Recreation and sports. It was right at the top of the list, recreation and sports. Now, I've been saying that for years, that we are not giving enough to the younger people in Orange. Unless they play soccer or rugby or cricket, not all of them want to do that. They want something else to do. So I'm saying to the council, let's take that on board. Let's not put signs up and have fishing competitions, because, as Councillor Kidd said, I don't think there's any fish in there. But to stop kids from throwing a line in, I think that's almost criminal. So I'm going to support Councillor Prevatera on this, 100%.
I think Councillor Taylor had his hand up.
Yeah, just quickly, echoing, supporting the motion, Mr. Mayor. Look, it was put in there as partly as a recreational facility, and that means a recreational facility for the entire community. Sure, it's a wetlands, and it was, as you have said, Mr. Mayor, it was an absolute mess. It was a quagmire. It was always waterlogged. It was overgrazed. It was overutilised, and it was of no value to the community generally. But it is a recreational facility that the ratepayers of this city partly pay for. And Mr. Mayor, I know a few people up there, and I've spoken to them since this issue's come up, and I mean, they tell me that there are a lot of foxes in there. There are cats, whether they're domestic cats or whether they're feral cats, I don't know. But there's cats in there, and obviously even domestic cats would probably go in there and do a bit of hunting. So, you know, a few kids going in there, and you're dead right. You're not going to have professional fishermen going in there. It's going to be a few kids going in there, and let's, you know, God, lighten up a bit. You know, I mean, it is a facility for the entire community. It is not just for a privileged few. It is for the entire community, and that includes the children of the area as a recreational area that it was always intended to be for the community and be part of the neighbourhood that's up there so that they can utilise it. I think we're far too precious about this. Look, if there's any fish in there, there'd be a limited value. I'd imagine they're probably redfin. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is, surely we're not at that point where we're going to deny the community access to that area if they want to throw a line in. It just seems a frivolous argument as far as I'm concerned. I mean, open it up and let people use it to its up.
Councillor Hamling, I think, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Miletto, yeah.
I can't see the problem with it. You know, especially in the staff comment there where they would talk about putting a boardwalk extension with a fishing deck I don't live too far from there, and we often go walking around there. There are dogs off leash. There's dogs swimming in the actual wetlands in summer. I've seen several dogs in there. So, you know, and as you said, if there's no fish in there, just the joy of having some family time, going down beside there and throwing a line in, you mightn't catch anything, but gee, you had some good family time and some good laughs and some good memories. So I can't, as long as we can, you know, I'd like to see us put a boardwalk extension so we're not walking around the edges, interrupting any bird life trying to nest or whatever. I'd be very happy to support this.
Councillor Miletto and then Councillor Whitten. You're muted, Councillor Miletto. You're muted, unmuted. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that.
All right.
Just a point of clarification to the relevant director. If this wetlands is open up to recreational fishing, like we're suggesting, are the people who fish required to have an inland fishing licence?
Children under the age of 16 don't have to have
That's
a
what I
licence,
asked.
or if you're Aboriginal.
That's what I asked. What I asked was, are people required to have a licence to fish in there? Because I'm assuming that there will be people who are above the age of 16 who require a purpose. They do it for saltwater fishing and inland fishing. If we open up this to recreational fishing, do we need to provide education or provide signage that people who intend on fishing in those areas are required to have the appropriate permit or fishing licence?
Mr. Chair, this would be like any other inland waterway requiring those licences.
Thank you.
Serious fisherman.
Who hasn't spoken?
Councillor
Whitten and then Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the motion. In my opinion, as young people who grew up in Orange, we used to roam around the city with our ball of cotton and a bit of steak in the pocket, and we did yabbying. And we walked along National Avenue there, and we even went yabby fishing in the stormwater that ran along near the Olympic swimming pool there. We used to go in there yabbying and catch quite a few. I haven't seen a few mates in my time in the late 60s and early 70s fishing for yabbies in Cook Park in the duck pond. So I think a lot of the I think we're getting a bit out of hand. It's like most of these young children and young blokes are going to be fishing for yabbies with a bit of cotton and enjoying themselves, and they're not going to be really wandering out with a full tackle of hooks and sinkers and the fish in a dam, you know, like, so I think we've got to be a bit flexible here, so I'll be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Duffy. You've got to press the mute button.
Got to get rid of the mute, mate.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And sorry for that little indiscretion, but I, for one, carry busloads of kids around every day, 8, 9, 10 years of age. They talk about their little extra days of the weekend. I love kids. Let them enjoy themselves. If you want us to preserve the life, as a lot of other people said, the wildlife, get rid of the foxes and make the cats flat. Simple as that. I mean, they're the ones that do the damage, not the young kids. They're going to go down and talk about how they nearly caught a fish that probably wasn't there. Who cares? But let them enjoy themselves. I mean, look, I said earlier before this was a transitional council, but we didn't know we hated our ratepayers and residents with our parking attitude and our towards affordable housing. Well, now if we're not going to pass this, we may as well say we don't like kids. Let them enjoy themselves. Bring it on.
Councillor Nugent.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question then of clarification, and maybe given all the talk about foxes and cats, maybe we should be opening it up for shooting as well in that area. But the motion seems to refer to the temporary signage, but there's permanent signage in the wetlands with no fishing on it. So are we saying that all of that signage is going to now be removed or have to be replaced? And at what expense will that be?
I don't think that's part of the motion, actually.
Well, then there's still going to be signage at the wetlands that have no fishing.
That's an operational thing, how they do it. That's if it gets through.
Mr Mayor, I move the motion be put.
Debate, I will put the motion. All in favour of the motion, raise your hands, please.
Mario's up, is it?
Mario, what are you doing?
He's not even on.
He's frozen.
He's on
Mario,
mute.
unmute yourself.
No, he's frozen. He's dropped off.
He is frozen too, I think, yeah. All right, against. I think the staff are getting the hands. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. The motion is carried. We move on.
Here, just have a still photo with your hand up the whole meeting.
4.2 has been withdrawn. 5.1 is general reports. First of all, there's the Murray-Darling Association membership. The recommendation.
Move the recommendation.
Move Councillor Turner. Second, Councillor McRae. All in favour, hands please. Against, thank you. 5.2 is an update on the outstanding resolutions from council, including those taken on notice and notice of motion. If I may say, I found this very, very informative, and I'd like that to see us have that monthly or quarterly or whatever it is. It's a good way of us being able to keep track how things are actually moving, how resolutions are moving or not moving, and when things are actually complete. All I would like, when it is completed, I'd like the date or the week that it's actually completed. Councillor Nugent.
I was just going to move the recommendation, Mr.
Yep. Moved Councillor Nugent, I'll second it.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Taylor and Councillor McRae.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, there's an item there on the 4th of February 20 that I moved, and it was about the...
what page, Councillor Taylor?
What page are we on? It's page 28. Page 28, there's a motion I moved, or on the 4th of February, about parking. I think it was around the vicinity of Sale Street and Prince Street. I asked that we take it back to 1 hour, and I asked that we could get it in place before the DPI move into the building over there. Look, Mr Mayor, pains me to say this, but I mean, I tried to raise this with the CEO last week, but he wasn't there. But I got an email back on this particular issue, and the email was from a staff member, and it basically said, look, we haven't got the resources to be able to get the appropriate information to implement this at this time. I haven't got the resources. That disappointed me, but what does disappoint me, Mr Mayor, is I moved another motion in the council over, and Councillor Duffy, I think, was the seconder, over council parking officers as far as using discretion and common sense. And it seems that we don't have the resources to properly investigate something like this, but we do have the resources. This continued tax on people parking on nature strips around town. I've had 2 instances of people. I had one where a man parked for the same spot on the nature strip outside a large nature strip outside he had maintained for 30 years, a large block. And he now obviously doesn't do that. Council have to now mow that. It would be quite expensive, I would imagine, because he was fined $268, I think, for parking there, and he parked there for 30 years. Last week, Mr Mayor, I had another instance brought to me where a gentleman was parked on the nature strip, and he was sitting in a ute on the nature strip eating his lunch in a car. And I mean, a photo was taken by a parking officer. I mean, our parking officers sit in cars and take photos of people doing this. Surely in this time, these unprecedented times and times of difficulty, that we've got more to do than trying to look for people parking on nature strips. I mean, it's just not on. I was chairman of the Disability Access Committee for 16 years, and I know the committee and I fought for many years to get disability parking spots put in place around the city, and particularly around the CBD. And I support parking officers throwing the full force of the law at people who park in those spots, or people say who park for 4 hours in a 2-hour zone. But this continued campaign about people, and what we're doing, we're issuing warnings, and the warnings are coming in the form of letters and so forth that are taking up council time and resources. In a lot of the streets, honestly, they're not impeding anything. They're wide streets, they're residential streets. There's no shortage of parking anywhere. They're not impeding pedestrian traffic. Surely we've got better things to do in these difficult times than that. So I can't seem to get...
Councillor Taylor.
I'll just finish up. Look, I can't get anyone to properly investigate this as far as Sale Street and Prince Street, but we have officers that apparently are sitting in cars waiting and take photos of people on nature strips. It's just not on. And can we please just live by the resolution, common sense and discretion? There's obviously better ways to use council resources.
Mr. Waddell.
Oh, look, I'll certainly take that up with Mr. Hodges on the parking side of things. Mr. Theakstone, are you there? I think you are. You've got quite a few of these parking signage matters held up because you haven't held a traffic committee. Would that be correct, Mr. Greenham, Mr. Theakston?
Yes, that's correct, David. We haven't had a traffic committee for a few months now, and the Sale and Prince we have been working on. We have the consent from the landowners next to the shops to extend that 1 hour zone down along Sale Street. So I'll be drafting the report this week, and hopefully we'll get a traffic committee out in the next couple of weeks.
Can we please have a traffic committee, because these items are starting to pile up. It can be done by Zoom, so thank you. Let's have one soon.
Good.
Definitely, yeah. We've got a few items, a lot of housekeeping to do.
Well, I've got the email, Mr. CEO, if you want to see it.
All right, thank you.
The chairman's fault. No,
Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My inquiry is to the CEO regarding on page 41, item 4.2 from the 7th of November. So this was a notice of motion regarding business rates and the levers available to council to support the Orange CBD businesses. So I'm interested in a time frame, keeping in mind we've got the Future City project, hopefully for approval tonight. But we've also got the COVID rebound group meeting up, and I'm just wondering where this is up to. It seems to be taking quite a while.
Yeah, Mayor Culper, I have that for review. Let's just say I'm not happy with the report. I will commit to getting that report to the 15th of the month.
To the next meeting?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Tony, do you have your hand up?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No. Nope. No other. All in favour? Against? So, sorry, Councillor Ham, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. Just on page 48. Yeah, sorry. On page 48, with the matter arising about the Ploughman's Lane upgrade, it's got to complete. So we complete that by sending a letter away asking for funding. Is that correct?
I'll ask Mr. Grenham to reply. I mean, that matter is complete in that we've taken that road section on board for grant applications. Mr. Grenham?
And I suppose my next question is, have we heard anything back about the funding that we have applied for?
No, we haven't heard anything back yet, but I believe the announcement on the roads funding is imminent. I believe we also provided a report at the time.
Yeah, so that's completed. I would have thought. Yeah, okay, understand. Thank
so
you.
not the works being undertaken, but the request for a report.
Okay, thanks. We vote all in favour. And no one against. Thank you. 5.3.
Happy to move it.
I only see the future. Move Councillor Munro, was it?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second to Councillor Hamling.
Duffy.
Second to Councillor Hamling.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Taylor first. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I know this is going on exhibition for 40 days, but I mean, there's been a couple of articles in the media on this, and I mean, there are some quite controversial issues in here, you know, things talking about Summer Street becoming one lane and so forth. So I would ask that council staff promote that this is on exhibition as much as possibly can. I know they'll do that, but I'm just saying we really need to emphasise this, because there are quite a number of issues that people have raised with me and concerns they've raised over this. So we need to let as many people know up for public comment and exhibition, because I really don't think this probably will have to be amended, I'd imagine, a fair bit.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is, I promote the thought of going on exhibition. There's over 100 projects in this type of thing now, and there's probably only very few that I agree with, because I believe Orange should be Orange, shouldn't be somewhere else. But let it go on exhibition, let people make comments. I agree with Councillor Taylor, especially about the one lane up and down Summer Street with bike tracks either side, but that's just not on as far as I'm concerned. But put it out there, let's see how they go.
Yeah, well, there's 40-odd thousand people out there that will have the opportunity to have a say. Councillor Nugent.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to see it go out on public exhibition. It's been something we've been talking about pretty much since the start of this council term, and it'll be good to see this plan go out. The plan has, my understanding, the plan has been developed with considerable input from members of the community through the reference group that was formed, which consisted of about 30 people from all walks of life and all different professions. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what the comments come back as. There are 100 different projects in there, and my understanding is that once we get the feedback, it's then up to the councillors to decide which projects we prioritise, and they're obviously not all going to be done in the term of this council. It'll probably the bulk of it in terms of implementation will fall on the next council to do. So, but it's good to see that we've got some money in the budget to at least get this started, and we're trying to leverage obviously funding from the state and federal government as well.
Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's really exciting to see this, which predominantly economic development project to revitalise the CBD. I do hope that exhibition period does assist us in prioritising, but I think it's also interesting to note that some councillors were probably still in high school, like myself, when the last revitalisation was done in the 1990s, and other councillors were probably on council. So it also shows we've got experience as well as perhaps new perspectives being part of this consultation and our decision making.
I was in primary school.
Okay, Councillor Romano, then Councillor Turner. Councillor Romano?
No, I just answered Councillor McRae. I was in primary school in the 90s.
Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief comment. A fantastic report, but little things will be achieved. A lot of things will never be achieved. Like a lot of the things would only ever happen if we had 100,000 people, as far as who's going to fund it all. But there's some great ideas. How we're going to move Woolworths, I don't know, but things like that. But it'll certainly generate some discussion. It'll also generate some of the schemes that are proposed that don't go ahead. We will get the blame as a council for not carrying out what we said we were going to do, because a lot of people would understand that this report is what we're going to do. It's only a report and a concept plan for what we may be able to do and what we may be able to afford to do if we get some funding from our side. Certainly not going to be able to afford to do it on council's resources alone. But a great idea. I'm sure we'll get a lot of reports, and it'll be more fully discussed at the end of those 40 days.
If I may, it reminded me on Sunday we were talking about what happens in planning. I reckon a really good example is the Boer War Memorial. It was built in 1905 and put on the corner of Summer and Sale. Well, guess what happened? Orange went car mad, and it became too dangerous on that corner, so they moved it down onto the corner of Sale and Anson Street. Guess what happened? the population increased again, and it became too dangerous. So they moved it to where it is now. So it's quite interesting. We do have to plan, and I think the most important thing, we've got to look 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years out. And I think, yeah, some of it sometimes takes, you've got to be quite game. I remember all the controversy about that part of the street being closed off to pedestrian traffic. I reckon if you went backwards now and said that you wanted to open it up, there would all be hell break loose. And so, yeah, I think nothing ventured, nothing gained, but I think I've been to a lot of those planning days. I think it was great to see a whole lot of different ideas come out. And as you said, it'll be interesting to see the comments that come back from the community. And then, of course, we have to make some decisions and then hopefully get the money to implement some of those plans. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to congratulate the people who put it together, because it is a good report. And, you know, we could be 100,000 people in 15, 20 years. Who knows? I think this is so important that we do it now. We don't want to stay in the past. We keep going forward, and all we can see is orange going forward. And I just think it's whoever was involved in putting the thing together should be commended, and that goes for most of the staff that put hard work into this. So thank you.
All in favour that goes out on exhibition for the 40 days? Against? Thank you. Did you get those, Mr. Woodell? It was unanimous anyhow. 5.4.
Move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Second it, Mr. Mayor. Second it.
So who moved it? Sorry.
Councillor Whitten.
Councillor Whitten.
Munro.
Munro. All in favour?
Thank you.
Hands, thank you. Against? Unanimous. 5.5 is the Lisa Rywena over
Move,
the
Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hamlin.
Moved by who? Councillor Hamlin.
Munro.
Moved by second by Councillor Duffy. Just before I put the motion, can I ask a question? The cricketing expert, who's responsible under this lease for the maintenance of the building?
Have to be council.
Council-owned building.
Have to be council, Mr. Mayor.
So it's not part of the lease, the building.
Mr. Moore, hopefully.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The minor maintenance and cleaning is the responsibility of the Cricket Association. The major maintenance is the responsibility of council. So that's similar to all the majority of our buildings.
Can other people use that clubhouse if they wanted to hire it?
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Mayor, but I'm sure we could make arrangements if they wanted to.
Mr. Mayor, I can tell you that when I was president.
The reason I asked the question, let me finish, Councillor Duffy. The reason I asked that question, I've been asked twice in the last 2 weeks. As you know, a lot of fitness groups go down there now and do, fitness work on that area. And there's, I reckon there'd probably be 16 to 20 of them. These are more adults. And there's also another group of, what do you call?
Dog lovers.
Train your dog, so all that sort of stuff go down there. And I was asked by them, could they hire it at various times? And I said, I don't know, I'd get back to them, that's all. So if we can find out what the situation is with the use of that building outside of when cricket's not used. Because with that lease, what I'm saying, that building would sit there unused, basically, right through winter. And there possibly could be a good use of it. It's got toilets in it. Got a kitchen in it, and it just sits there, possibly unused during the winter. Now, Councillor Duffy, our cricketing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listen, when I was president of the Cricket Association, I remember a lot of the committees that there. We did let other organisations use it, and I think it's a matter for those organisations that do want to use it, step up and ask the association. I'm pretty sure they're usually quite accommodating if they do want to use it.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Hamling.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to comment on one of the things you spoke about with the amount of people with the positive feedback that I get. I often take my dog down there. it's a great place. Chuck your dog in and let them go wild. And you know, most of the people, we provided bags and bins down there. Most of the people use the field and pick up after their dog. But all I get is it's a great thing the council does for this field in winter to let people go down and exercise their dogs.
Yeah, like the same food there. So all in favour? Against? Thank you. 5.6 is the lease of 73A Hill Street to the Orange Regional Conservatorium.
Moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Munro, seconded Councillor McRae. Hopefully at the next council meeting we may have a little bit of good news for you. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. 5.7 is city entrance sign conceptual design.
I'd like to move the recommendation, Mr Mayor, with an amendment.
Yep.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Nugent, I'd like to move the motion with an amendment, just with the additions of the wording at the end, with the minor modification to the design to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional owners of this land.
I'll second that.
Did you get that, whoever's doing the minutes? Did you get that, David, Mr. Waddell?
Yes. Yep, got that. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a seconder.
Yes, Mr Mayor, Councillor Hamling.
Councillor Hamling, thank you very much.
So,
All in
can I just ask a
favour?
couple of
Oh,
questions?
sorry, Councillor Duffy. Yep.
Yeah, I thought when this was going to come back, and I didn't expect to come back so quick, that we were going to get design of what it is, how big it was actually going to be, what the cost was going to be, and some details about the ambience around the area, what we're going to do. I'm not happy with any of those things not coming back in the report. And I think specifically, if you go back to the resolution that we spoke about before when we deferred it, that was one of the reasons that some of the reasons of why we deferred it. That we wanted to know what the cost of the whole thing was going to be, how big was it going to be, all those type of designs and those type of things there. I know for a fact when we spoke about Bathurst, you've got the ambience of the dam there, you've got the ambience of the cemetery that's there, the older part of the cemetery. You've got ambience there. Out on that spot out there, it's absolutely like nearly a desert. But you know, they were things that were supposed to be addressed. But anyway, please yourself, I'll be voting against it.
Councillor Ham, you want to say something? All I want to say, look, is the exact same thing. Look, I was part of that group and so was Councillor Nugent. But I want to make it quite clear, what we actually said was something along that Tallangatta design and principles, something simple, something well done. But I still have the questions on what size, how big, what cost. Now, if it is going in the triangle area coming in, that's quite a big area. Just say we put a thing that was, just say 3 metres wide and 2 metres, 3 metres long and 2 metres wide, and it was stuck in the middle of that, and it looked like a pinhead, right? So I've got no idea of the size of it. I've got no idea really of the cost of it, but I have done my homework and found out how much everything costs from design right through to construction in Bathurst and elsewhere. And with this, I've got no idea at all. I did ask the CEO to find out how much we'd spent to get those graphics there. And that was, how much was it, Mr. Waddell?
The graphics, the design, plus the detailed engineering, including electrical engineering, came to something like $13,000.
Yeah. Just for the design of it?
Yep.
For the detailed design of it. So that's ready to build. Yeah.
So, and what I'm saying, it's hard. I'm not an engineer, but I'd like to have a bit of an idea, you know, how big it's going to be. Whether if you're coming into Orange, you would actually see it. Now, the reason I say this is, you know, and I'll get condemned out there. I went through this before with those fantastic totem poles that we have around the place, that I still haven't run into anybody who said that they're a good idea. Right? Welcome to Orange, running that way. Signage that says this, that way. We spent a lot of money on those in the design. We had a more fancy designer from Sydney come up with that great idea, and that's what got through. And next thing they were put in place, and everyone was saying, "Oh, well, I didn't agree with that. I didn't think they were going to be like that." Coming into Orange from the west, I don't even know it says Orange or welcomed Orange. Now, if you have a look at the totem coming in the Escort Way, I'll bet you most of you can't even tell me where it is because you've never actually noticed it. But that's the welcomed Orange totem sign. Now, at the time when it went through, I bet they didn't realise that it's only probably probably about a quarter of a metre wide and about 2 metres high for running that way. I just can't come to grips. I'd like to know what size it is and how, what it sits there and what it's going to cost. Now, if the cost comes back at, say, $90,000, just say, and that's going to be, say, the cost for one sign at the first entrance coming in from the east, all hell will break loose. I'm quite sure. But by what you're saying in here, we're virtually saying, right, we're going with that, and none of you know the size of it.
Or the cost.
Councillor, Mr. Waddell.
Just a couple more things. Happy to defer this and bring back, cost estimates and whatnot. If you look at the graphic on page 114, 115, in terms of the size of it, you'll see relativity against a standing human. Just so, it's a pretty substantial sign. Happy to bring it back. Happy to bring it back with some more detail. Happy to.
I would like to move that it just comes back with some, just the sizing of it and what it's going to cost.
I'll move that way, Mr. Mayor. I'll move an amendment. To let the report come back with more detail pertaining to the actual size of the building, to the size of the DA, and the size of the and the cost of the actual thing, and the ambience that's supposed to be going to be around it in the future.
And with what Councillor Nugent said, welcome to the Radford Council.
Second that.
Second, Councillor Munro. Councillor Nugent.
Look, I'll speak against Councillor Duffy's amendments. Look, as the CEO pointed out, we've got a sense of the size of it. It is a substantial development there. And there has actually been some concern expressed to me about whether there's any traffic safety issues in terms of blocking the view lines along the highway. But I suppose I've got a question again for maybe the CEO or the relevant director. When the design was done, presumably the consultant went out and had a look at the area and the space that it was going to be going into and the placement and in terms of the ambience, I'm presuming that's why we've got the grasses, the natural grasses, the rocks, the flags behind to create a sense of ambience. And I think that triangular block really needs something to fill the space. So to as a welcome to Orange, so I'm happy for us just to make the decision and go ahead with it tonight. I don't think we need to defer it again. I'd like to see us make the decision and get something built as soon as possible.
Mayor.
Councillor Whitten, yeah.
Thank you. Look, I'll speak for the amendment. I think it would be a bit of gross negligence on our behalf as councillors if we were to approve any type of construction on behalf of the ratepayers without knowing the actual cost. I think if we were asked downtown how much is that particular item costing out the road, and we don't know, we don't look real bright. So I think we need to know what it's going to cost.
Now, who was Councillor Turner? Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. At the last meeting, I raised concern that we didn't know what the cost was, and I'm pretty sure I've received an email in the last couple of days with a figure of around 60,000, but I haven't got it in front of me. I was assuming that figure would come back in this report, which it hasn't. I also raised the issue: have we got any comment from the RMS as far as the size of the sign, the placement? Do they agree, disagree? Given that it's an RMS road, I'm quite amazed that we haven't sought their agreement. So that's another reason I would support the deferment tonight, or an amendment tonight, because we haven't got that information. And but to get the size of the sign in proportion to the area, I agree. We need to know really what it will look like in proportion. I agree with Councillor Nugent. Yes, it's fairly big at the moment, but we're not quite sure because it is a reasonable size area out there. But I think we certainly need more information.
Mr. Waddell.
Oh, look, happy to do so. We did speak to the RMS, I believe, and we would normally bring. This hasn't gone to tender yet, so we would.
Councillor Mileto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of consideration with regards to the flags around the signage itself. I'd like to propose that those 3 flags consist of 1 be the Indigenous flag, 2 an Australian flag, and 3 a third flag representing orange.
Yep. Well, good idea. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm not going. I know better than to get in an argument about the design and so forth of it. I mean, we've got the opening of a toilet facility in Robertson Park, which is indicative of the caution you have to go there. But I mean, I really think it is imperative that we get costs of this. Now, the reason I say that is simple. I mean, I would have never ever believed that a toilet facility and a kitchen facility at the Naylor Pavilion would cost $775,000. That's why I'm concerned. I mean, I look at that, and like Councillor Turner said, he had in his mind something about $60,000, which would be quite reasonable for something like that. But boy, oh boy, some of the things, the costings I've seen in recent times, I want to know the succinct amount of money that we're voting on to put this in place. And I think it could have been in the report tonight, and Councillor Turner was right. It was very clearly stated at the last meeting that we have to look at all the designs, which is only simple governance. I mean, and to look at the design, and the most important factor is how much it's going to cost the ratepayers.
Councillor Hamley.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. So has the CEO got a cost estimate on this? If an email has been apparently sent out to Councillor Turner, there's no cost.
There is no cost. There is no cost estimate. Certainly none that we would share. We're nowhere near that in terms of detail. I wouldn't give that out.
Councillor Nugent.
Question then. In terms of procedure, if we were to approve this, I think Mr. Waddell said that we'd go to tender. We'd call for tenders to build it.
No, not necessarily.
Mr. Chair, yeah, sorry, I think I did use the word tender. We'd go for local builders quotes, I think, given what's in my head as a price. We would also tend, with a project as significant as this, you would see, say if you went ahead with this tonight, you would see a DA lodged. We have consulted with the RMS. So you'd have a DA step, and then given the importance, we could do a closed report with the quotes and the result of the process.
So we would have information about the costs, and we would have the opportunity to say yes or no further down the track.
Correct.
With the DA.
Yep, correct. We could go and get a quantity surveyor's report now based on this design, if you wish.
Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So really this motion is about whether the design itself, in terms of the type of design it is with the cutout, the flags, the rocks, the grasses, is the type of design that we are looking at progressing. There's no money budget set aside or that's numbered. This is about whether this is the design that we would want to proceed with. Is that right?
Okay, if I can answer that, as far as I believe what the motion was that come from Parks and Street Trees and Waterways after bloody years of discussion was yes, that a simple sign like this that had to be low maintenance, so it wasn't ongoing maintenance cost to it, but it said something that you hear in orange, and this is orange and it's a welcome sort of place. And most people agreed that, you know, the look, the one that done in Bathurst was, you know, the sort of thing, simplistic, easy to maintain. And that's what, and so that's what's come back. So yeah, so the answer to that is yes. But it was very, very important that we did discuss that also, because I was the mover of the motion, and I've been doing this for 3 years trying to get some signage in the city that was adequate, saying that we had needed something that was simplistic, it was low maintenance, and then we had it at all the entrances. Because if we had a Taj Mahal, we'd build one and we'd have a riot on our hands, and we would never ever see them at all the entrances in Orange. And that's why I came back and I sent to all councillors, I did my homework, took the photos, showed you over a big area and low, so people didn't interfere with traffic, line of sight and all that, and the total costing for what it cost at Bathurst, 40-something thousand.
So thank you for answering that question. I guess I'm in support of the current motion because it seems like it's actually making progress, and it's a design that we can then move forward on with getting all the costings, timelines and DAs, etc. It's about whether we like this aesthetic. I don't have a problem with it. We're better to have something than nothing. And the Parks, Trees, Waterways group have come up with this. We've previously discussed it. Let's go ahead.
Just one question, Mr. Mayor, please. One question. So we're talking about this one on the eastern side of Orange, not 3 signs the same for every entrance to Orange. Are we? How many signs are we?
They're talking about this on
this one. Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, is everyone, can you read out the amendment, please?
I believe the amendment says that a report be brought back on entrance signage is on entrance sign at the intersection of the Northern Distributor Road and Mitchell Highway on the eastern approach, including detail on size, design
and cost.
Amenity, I think Councillor Duffy said, amenity, yeah, amenity and cost implications, something like that, yep.
Ambience, and also also add the etc. on that, because Councillor Turner raised some very good issues there.
Sorry, Councillor, you got a question on that?
Well, we've talked about the acknowledgement of Wiradjuri country, and I thought,
yeah, for sure.
Can that be included in that list of issues then?
Only too happy to have that included.
And the flags.
Sorry, and the flags, yep.
Have you agreed to the flags? So that and the flags include the.
I was a move. I'm quite happy. It was the second. It was the seconder.
Me, Mr. Mayor. Would I just be able to chat for a minute about the flags?
No. We're not discussing the design of anything.
The flags when it comes back to us.
It won't come back to us.
All right. Okay. Very good.
So I'll put the amendment first. All in favour? That means that it would come back straight away with the costings and everything. Rightio, just one, two.
The ratepayers. Costs. Costs, the most important part of it, the cost.
The cost, yeah, against. So, the amendment becomes the motion. All in favour? Hands. Thank you. Thank you. Look, I think the important thing is we're agreeing. We're agreeing with this, but I think it'd be, if we've got the costings and that sort of thing, it is going to make a big, big difference.
Might cost $1 million and we don't want it.
That's exactly.
That could actually happen. That may happen, because I am concerned. Please, I encourage you all to go out and have a look where the road separates out there and have a look at the size of where it's size.
$775 for a toilet and a kitchen.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question about the cost? Do we have money in the budget for this for next year? Or I thought there was money in the draft budget for next year.
We don't know what it's costing.
We don't know how much it costs.
Yeah, we've got money in the budget. We don't know how much this is going to cost. So we may not have enough.
Okay, well, I'm just wondering how we determine how much to include in the draft budget, I suppose.
Well, it's in the draft budget, but we don't know how much it's going to cost, do we?
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
It's Jason here.
Yeah.
There is $50,000 in this year's budget. We were assuming that we were going to get this started and at least finished, and there's $50,000 in next year's budget at this point.
Is that inclusive of the 13,000 we've already spent on the design?
No.
No, I don't believe so, Councillor.
Where did it come from?
So let me get it straight. So we've got 50,000 in there. We've already spent 13,000. We've got another 50 plus another 50.
No, we've got 100,000 in total. 50.
So we've got 87.
Yeah.
86, 87.
Well, I'll have to check about the 13, Councillor Taylor. But
so that is finished. We're finished with that matter.
Yeah, we're moving into closed.
Could I please, just before we go into closed,
move that way, Mr. Mayor.
could I just go ask a matter arising, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Munro, what is it?
Please, I was just wondering if I could ask staff for a report on how councillors should conduct themselves regarding social media, and how they can maybe get some training on how they conduct themselves on social media in regards to comments. Could I have a report back on, please?
Sure. Can I just help you this way, Councillor Munro? All councillors can access training of their choice, whether it be on a one-to-one basis or as a group. That's just a matter of just going, seeing the human resources person through the CEO, and they will take you through the necessary steps.
That's okay, Mr. Mayor. I did talk to the general manager, and he said he could bring back a report on that aspect of if you look at the councillors, I have it in front of me here actually. It's the councillors' expenses and policy. Okay, you can get the latest copy of that. It's available on our website, and it says in there exactly what you're entitled to. And then it's just a matter of seeing the CEO and discussing through what you want to do.
I could give you some advice, and that is to defriend anyone that goes for South Sydney or Manly.
Hey.
All right. We have a move into closed. Councillor Duffy, a seconder, please. Councillor Hammond, all in favour?
Aye.
Chief Executive Officer will advise the Council if any written submissions have been received relating to any item advertised for consideration by a closed meeting of the Council.
There are no such written submissions.
In accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993 and the Local Government Act in brackets General Regulation 2005, in the opinion of the Chief Executive Officer, the following business is of a kind as referred into Section 10A brackets 2 of the Act and should be dealt with in a confidential session of the Council being closed to the press and the public. Now, the items we have are 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. And the reasons for confidentiality, these items are classified confidential under the provisions of Section 2 brackets C.
Mayor's gone.
He's gone.
He's gone. Over to you, Deputy Mayor.
He's gone too.
Councillor Duffy thinks he's the mayor in the mayor's office.
Who's next in line?
I wouldn't say that, because I'm not in the mayor's office. I'm in Bambi Peterson's office. Is it Bambi Peterson or Banjo Patterson? I don't know which one it is.
What?
May I suggest any councillor who's in a position to continue the meeting, who is also a chair?
No, I'll do it. Where was he up to?
He was...
What page are we on?
On page 171, reading about what we're about to go into closed for.
I move Councillor Whitten.
Excuse me while I get there. I was reading now something else. The mayor. I will extend an invitation to any member of the public present at the meeting to make presentation to council as to whether the meeting should be closed for a particular item done all that, but I'll keep doing it. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and the Local Government General Regulations 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, in the opinion of the CEO, the following business is of kind as referred to Section 10A2 of the Act and should be dealt with confidential session of council in the meeting closed. Mr. CEO, do we have anybody?
We have no one, and we are in a position to go into a closed meeting. I will ask Ms. Constantine to cease the recording and start a new recording once we're in closed, councillors.